Today we're going to be looking at Revell's 1/48 scale P-39 kit. I've kind of been looking forward to taking a look at this kit, since it is a Revell kit, it's very easy to find. Plus it's fairly inexpensive in comparison to, say, the Edwards boxing. So let's get into it. So one of the things it does come with is this sprue of extra parts that includes a standing pilot figure as well as a mechanic. And unfortunately, in both cases, they're fairly poorly cast. In fact, on this mechanic figure, if you look fairly carefully, hopefully this will show up on camera, you can see it didn't quite come out correctly, as there's a bit of a hole there. So unfortunately, that is a big disappointment, as one of the reasons I did get this particular boxing was because it did have these extra parts. So that's disappointing. It does come with the external 50 cal wing mount gun pods, so it does give you that option, as well as a couple other smaller odds and end parts. Moving on to the clear parts, there is a little bit of flashing here, but other than that, they're very nicely rendered. No noticeable mold lines or anything of that sort. So, good job there. Next up, we have the main two fuselage halves and a couple of the wheels and a few odd ends, as well as a couple of the gear bay doors, it looks like, as well, and the control stick. Surface detail is a mix of raised and recessed. Find it odd that they did some of this recessed and some of it raised. You would assume they do it one or the other. The door on this side seems a little oddly shaped. It doesn't seem like the correct size. Just to my eye, it looks a little big, especially right in here, this area. Nice thing about this one is it does include this open section, so if you want to, as they had the mechanic figure, do a diorama with the work being done, you can do that fairly easily. Same here with the gun access area. Excuse me. They do mold the 20mm cannon into the fuselage part, so be aware of that. And there's another aspect I'll need to mention once we get into instructions. Pilot figure came out a little bitter, but still it's not very good. Gear doors are alright, as with the landing gear. With regards to the cockpit detail here, it's not too bad. Do like how they molded this forward section, as if I recall from when I built the Edwards kit, they really didn't include much detail in this area, so props to the Edwards on that regard. Now here we have the 20mm, the main gear doors, the prop, and the bombs. Now the bombs, as you can see, are heavily flashed. You're only given one prop, which is a bit of a downer, as it does limit the number of options. Gear doors, as I said, fine. And as you can also see, that there's a lot of flashing on the gun, so that's going to take some work to clean up. Here we have the main lower part for the wings. There is a little bit flashing, and much like the fuselage halves, the detail is a mix of raised and recessed. Now, one thing to note is that the main gear area here does seem a little bit on the shallow side. Again, a lot of this is coming from having built the Edwards kit. It just seems like to me that this area needs to be a little deeper to be correct for the scale. Given different parts for the fuselage, or excuse me, 2 halves for the fuel tank, as well as the nose guns and one of the or air sensors. A couple other odds and end parts, as well as the nose gear. Strangely enough, they have this here. Again, I gotta double check the instructions on that one. Much like the lower and the fuselage halves, upper parts of the wings the same, and with the horizontal. You're given 2 sets of exhaust pipes. With both sets, they're kind of poorly done. I definitely recommend looking at getting a aftermarket option. Now, one nice thing about this kit is that it does mold the wheels as in their sort of sagging, not sagging, but you know how they should look when the aircraft's on the ground. So that is a bit of a nice fact that they did that out of the box. You very rarely see that, so they did good there. Again, as I mentioned before, with regards to the door, spinner looks good. Now the detail on the dash is a little shallow, and it definitely could be better. Various bulkheads and ammo cans look fine, save for the flashing. So yeah. Now moving on to the decals, much like a lot of Edwards decals, they are somewhat thick, but in comparison to some of them I've seen, these are actually fairly good. So definitely not one I would say run out and grab aftermarket decals. They're definitely more than usable with this kit. Now this is one of the more thick instruction sheets I've seen from Revell, so that is somewhat of a good sign, at the same time bad. So much like everything, assembly starts in the cockpit. You do a lot of work up here in front for the nose area, as since it is opened, or can be opened, obviously. But I would say if you're not going to be building it with that nose section open, I'd say skip doing all this, as it's a waste of time for the most part. In fact, I would actually recommend, if you're not going to do that, I'd definitely use that area as where you'd stick some nose weight in, as this is definitely going to be a tail sitter. Do include decals for the cockpit instrumentation, or no, sorry about that. Yeah, there are a couple decals that you can use on to add some extra detail to the cockpit, but not much. Fairly straightforward. Cockpit detail, as I said, is alright. Again, various assembly. A lot of the Revell kits I've noticed do include little hole areas where you attach the landing gear doors. Why that may not be accurate, I do like it to some degree because it does simplify assembly. Now, here it has the instructions with regards to the nose cannon. If you're doing it with the 20mm, which, forgive me if I'm wrong, but a lot of them used, you just leave it as is. But if you're using a larger want to have the larger 37mm, you need to cut it. So that's something to be aware of when building the kit. Now, okay, here we go. So, yeah, that's where I was a little confused on, was how they decided to do this as a separate part, as I had not ever seen it done like that. To some degree, I would say it's easier just to mold that part on, but interesting options. And again, as I said, since you're going to be using those little parts for the gun barrels, if you're not going to be building the kit with that section open, just use that for the nose weight area. Now, as I said, you've got various options with regards to how to construct it, and very nicely they do point out which to use for which version, which I do like, so it does give you some options. And other than that, assembly is on the straightforward side. They do give you a little post thing if you don't add the weight. Yeah, other than that, there's nothing that really sticks out as far as assembly stuff. Basic paint schemes for North Africa or the Pacific. Personally, I prefer this one, but that's just me. So overall, this kit does have some issues, but at the same time, you know, given the cost difference between this or say the Edwards or the Husqvarna. Now, fair warning though, I haven't seen the Husqvarna kit. Personally, I'd like to check it out at some point. Overall though, it's not a terrible kit, and one thing I would possibly suggest doing is, if you've already built, say, the Edwards, to do some kit bashing and use some of the leftover parts from that, as they would definitely, to me, should work well, as well as potentially some of the excess decals, because if you've ever built one of the Edwards Profit kits, they give you a huge decal sheet as far as marking options to go with. So yeah, definitely a great candidate for kit bashing. Otherwise, I might say skip it, because there are some inaccuracies, but at the same time, it's a mixed bag. Let's put it that way. Now, this kit is a bit of a mixed bag. So depending on how you feel, I'd say get it, don't get it. I mean, if you're looking for a definitive collection, or you really just like the aircraft, definitely get it. Other than that, it's one you can miss and not cry over. So that was a look at Revell's 1/48 scale P-39. So till next time.